Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. I am so excited to be here. I'm excited to see you all. Thank you so much for joining us for a brand new episode of Pretend Talk Show, where the show is just for fun, but the guests are very, very real. So if you're joining us live, thank you so much for being here. Head over to the little chat box wherever you see the comments and make sure you talk with us because James is here to answer some questions, to be a part of this conversation. So that means we want to hear from you. Hey, Drew Baldwin. So definitely give us a shout over in the chat box. If you are watching the replay, guess what? You can also leave comments there because guess who checks them every day? This girl. So point being, let us know how you're doing, where you're coming from, what's going on in your world. Okay, let's jump into today's show. It is episode 10 of the Pretend Talk Show on July 10th. Oh, pretty good, pretty good. And today's guest is, as I mentioned, James Maple. So James Maple and I actually just spoke RIL for the first time about 3 minutes ago backstage. He's awesome, and I knew he would be. I know him through Afterbuzz TV. So some of you guys have heard me talk about Afterbuzz TV before. It is, of course, the ESPN of TV talk. It is the platform, the network really created by Maria Menounos. A lot of you know Maria Menounos. She's a famous entertainment news reporter and awesome, wonderful woman who James and I are both lucky enough to call mentor. Hi, Terry Baldwin. Thanks for joining the show. So I want to bring James on. He has been really active lately in the Black Lives Matter movement, and he's got some wonderful stories to share with us. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming James Maple to Pretend Talk Show. Hi, James.
Woohoo! Hey. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. I love that you no questions asked. You were just like, yeah, I'll hop on this show. And I knew it would be just easy to chat with you. You're so awesome to have you here.
I'm really excited to do this. Yeah, when Trina reached out to me, our mutual friend, I was so excited, and I did some research on the show, and I was like, "Heck yeah, I'm gonna do this."
So it's in our wheelhouse, right? Like we do all this training, we learn from Afterbuzz, and then there comes a point where you're like, network or not, platform or not, you got to just get out there and like make your own thing. So that's the show. That's what
exactly. Especially given the circumstances of COVID and everything going on right now. I'm so appreciative and so honored that you have this platform that you've created for yourself, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Oh, well, thank you. But yeah, this is Pretend Talk Show. We really focus on. They always say write what you know, so I like to talk about what I know and who. The things I have some experience with, which is, of course, how our worlds collide through hosting. Mm-hmm. So can you tell me a little bit about how you got involved with Afterbuzz TV, the hosting platform that we know each other through the lovely Trina Dong, who I see in the chat. Hey, Trina.
Hey, girl. Hey. I'm originally from Washington, D.C. I moved out here in March 28th, 2011. I remember this date specifically. Mm-hmm. And I worked in restaurants for a good deal of my life. And I always had a lust for entertainment. So I moved out here to do writing and to do acting, and working in restaurants. I kind of was, acting and doing hosting at my tables in a sense. It's kind of sound kind of strange, but basically if I were at a table featuring an item, you try to sell it and have to be charismatic and try to be all schmoozy. So I literally thought to myself, this natural skill that I have, I can really utilize this in an entertainment aspect. So I started to take classes with Suzanne Senna, the Senna series. She's a host, Emmy award-winning host for E! Entertainment. And I had coaches like Karamo Brown, who was also a Afterbuzz TV alum. He's one of the hosts.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Karamo.
Wow. How would I not know our famous alumni?
Small little world we have at Afterbuzz TV.
What are the next success stories, James?
So many. After finishing my courses with Suzanne Senna, I really wanted to explore further aspects of hosting. And I literally, this sounds super cheesy, but I went on Google and I was like, Los Angeles host training, and Afterbuzz TV popped up. And I did some research on the network and loved it and recognized Maria and Kevin from their show back in the day. And I submitted, and it brought me to Afterbuzz TV, and it's been nothing but great things since.
I have to stop you because there's two things that you said. There are three things actually that I'm like, whoa, okay, our lives are crazy parallel. First of all, I'm from Virginia.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So you know about Old Bay seasoning. We can talk about Old Bay
Heck,
seasoning.
yeah, there's like 6 cans in my cabinet right now.
Me too. Me too. It goes on everything.
Yeah.
I also worked in the restaurant industry. I actually feel like the crossover between restaurant industry and entertainment industry is like inherent. And I actually think that everybody should work in a restaurant, but you're right. There's something to being able to go, like the courage that it takes to be able to go up to a table of strangers and be like, hi, I'm here to make you feel comfortable, to make you like, you know, that does transfer over. I worked in a restaurant for 5 years. I've always wanted, my dream of all dreams is to host a travel show. So I'm like, okay, I need to get some training. And I Googled how to be a host and Afterbuzz came up and I was like, oh my God, this is down the street from me. It was like kismet. So I love that. Wow.
Yeah.
And then, okay. So in researching you, I should say, AKA cyber stalking, obviously I see that you've done quite a bit of acting too. So tell me about your acting stuff.
Yeah. So, you know, when I got out here, like I said, I had a lust for entertainment. I went to the University of Maryland for school. I graduated in 2009. I have a degree in government politics and history. And I am not using either of those degrees, as we can see. Well,
no, you are though. We'll talk about it. We'll
get to it later. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. So, for acting, it kind of just was an aspect of entertainment that just kind of felt natural to me. When I got out here, again, like I said, wanted to do writing, and I kind of fell into comedy. So I had residency at the Comedy Store. I was doing stand up, and I have to say the one thing I wish I would have done the second I got to LA was take classes at IO West. It's an improv group, like improv troupe. I could not emphasize how important that was for me to like step outside of myself and really think and be on your toes and be quick. So that kind of led me into acting as well. So the acting I've done in the past, I have a couple shows on Amazon. I've done How to Get Away with Murder, All Def Digital. I've done BuzzFeed. If you Google me on BuzzFeed, I've done a lot of BuzzFeed shows, a lot of BuzzFeed skits as well. So that was always a passion for me. But all the acting that I've ever done has always been kind of comedy driven. It's been a wonderful like ride, and it's been great to experience all aspects of entertainment. But for me, honestly, hosting was my baby. That was my passion. All roads led back to hosting, and every single aspect of entertainment that I've done, be it improv or comedy or even acting, I always felt the need to like talk to people and like engage as best as I can. So I knew at the end of the day that hosting was my jam, as I said.
Yeah. Well, you're very good at it. So it's so nice to have a guest on the show that I can just like, I'm like, oh, I can kick back and I know you're going to speak wonderfully. I love that so much. Yeah. Improv is another one of those skills. I feel like working in a restaurant, that I just wish it was like a curriculum for life. I feel like working in a restaurant makes you a more, tolerant, and like you are just more empathetic to people in the service industry in general. And then I feel like learning improv makes you not just, although it's invaluable for acting and hosting and sort of all facets of entertainment, but in life, it really, I think, coaches you to roll with the punches and to be flexible. I mean, and like the adage in improv is yes and, right? So it's learning to say yes and build instead of turning that into a no. Stand-up comedy, though, wow, that scares the crap out of me. How did you get? How have you? What's your experience been in stand-up comedy?
So stand-up has always been, again, the thing for me. It started with the restaurant industry. Again, I equate it to just walking up to a table and being engaging and charismatic and trying to be funny. So stand-up was a little scary at first, but it was a click. It was a quick click for me to really get it. To go back to your improv point, the one thing that I wanted to throw out to you, I always tell this story. I don't even know if I'll ever see this man again, but Mike Makovich, I see you out there. Mike was he was a random guy just in my improv class. But this is the importance of improv, I think. So the first day of improv, we all had to do like the icebreaker moment, like, what do you do? Where you from? Blah, blah, blah. So one of the questions was, what brought you to improv? And everyone had the similar, ethos that I had. I'm an actor. I'm this, I'm that. Mike's answer was different. Mike said, I am going through a divorce. I've tried every single aspect to save my marriage. And my wife has been telling me for 10 years that I don't listen. I'm here to learn how to listen. So to me, whenever I think about improv, I think about that. I take that step back for myself, and it's like, okay, you need to listen. And I've applied that like listening skill to my acting, to my hosting, to every aspect of my life, really. But Mike Malkovich, his like little side story when we were doing our icebreaker moment really stuck out to me. And I always love telling that story because people never think about like that aspect of hosting.
Who's chopping onions over here? I'm like tearing up at that. Like, what is that? That got me deep. I mean, that got me. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Learning to listen as a human, as a partner. Obviously, of course, as an actor. But yeah, that is even more to the point. Like such a life skill that we could all be taking with us. Oh man, I didn't expect to be crying yet.
I didn't even get you, girl.
I'm a Pisces. It happens. It happens quickly. Wow. Well, okay. So have you done some stand-up then, like performing yourself here in LA? There's a lot of comedy clubs out here.
Yes. So I had residency at the Comedy Store for about 6 months.
What does that mean? Have residency at?
So residency at any comedy place means basically like you have a set slot, a set time every single week or several times a week that you go in because you bring in so many people. So
oh my gosh, so you're a BFD is what you're saying.
I mean, I was a pretty BFD at the Comedy Store.
That's so cool.
I have my name. I signed one of the made it moments at the Comedy Store is in the main room. That's like the big cathedral room. There's a dressing room in backstage, and it's Richard Pryor's old dressing room. Next to that is Eddie Murphy's old dressing room, and it has this massive wall. And you made it when you sign the wall. And I signed the wall. I was so happy.
That is so cool. You must be so proud. Your parents must be so proud.
They are. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
how are you doing? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, so I performed at also Comedy Club in North Hollywood, Flappers, Laugh Factory. So, I've done a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
I love that. I don't know if you just saw this, I accidentally showed a comment on screen, but it totally stands. Can you see that? James makes everyone cry.
Oh, Trina. Hi, Trina Dong.
We see you, Trina. Love it. Wow, that's really, really cool about the Comedy Club. How are you all doing comedy in light of COVID? Are you doing virtual comedy sets or what's that like?
Yeah, so basically, I've seen the Comedy Store in particular. They are also a restaurant. So they have a little bit of an extra little leeway when it comes to opening up. They recently posted on Instagram just a couple days ago, actually, that they have outdoor seating and they're doing outdoor comedy as well. So it makes it a little bit easier. Yeah. So it's basically like a patio. Tables are spaced far away from each other. And then the comedian is spaced even further away from them. And then just do typical things like Zoom or any other online source. I think in the age of COVID, it has forced people to be more creative when it comes to comedy. And it's forced, I think, people to alter the way that they tell their jokes, and that they have to do more skit driven things and more like TikTok kind of things. So I think the aspect of sitting down, at a comedy club is going to be a thing of the past for now, because there's nothing like being in an audience and vibing with people and making eye contact and talking and getting close and backing it with the mic. So it's a little bit more difficult. So I can only imagine your late night show hosts Jimmy Kimmel and Seth MacFarlane. Oh, excuse me, not Seth MacFarlane. Seth Meyers rather. Yeah. Them having to sit in for Seth Meyers in particular, sitting in his attic talking to the camera, and I'm like, where's the receptive joke? Where's the laugh? I want to laugh.
I mean, I think I can honestly say, as an audience watching some of those shows from my home that they're producing from home, and they're being true, they're still doing great monologues and great sets, but it feels a little bit different because the laugh track isn't there, the audience members aren't there to laugh, and it's almost like as an audience we have to know what's funny based on how people around us respond. So it is. I feel for them too, having to create, be so creative in these times. At the same time, and I've said this, I think, on every show I've had so far, but hey, guess what, James? Right now, me and you, we're on the exact same network as Seth Meyers, and as Jimmy Fallon. We're all on the same playing field, you know? It's amazing. And if COVID has gifted us with that, I think it's been just this ability to use our voices and our platforms in the exact same way that the major networks and hosts are. That's been really cool.
And it looks great. I'm looking at it right now. It looks great.
Speaking of using your voice, you know, you have focused so much on comedy, and everything you do is light and humorous, and you know, got this fun side to it. And yet here we are faced with times of incredible social injustice, and you have used your voice to talk about these issues. Mm-hmm. So if you would for us, please, I know there's a lot, you've been super active in the Black Lives Matter movement. You created your own series, I Love You, James. And would you be so kind, and you can say no, because I know it's probably difficult to talk about, but you shared a story on your Instagram about what happened to you in high school. Are you comfortable sharing that story with us?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, tell us about it.
So as you said, Ashley, I've been pretty active in Black Lives Matter movement. Let's give the backstory about the I Love You, James series, and I'll lead into the story itself. So I've been protesting for I had been protesting for 8 days straight, and kind of the third or fourth day into it, it really started to take a toll on my psyche and started to take a toll on, you know, my everyday just basic practices. And I needed an outlet, and you know, my typical outlets of like going to host a show or doing things like that weren't there given COVID. So I kind of just sat down at my computer one day and just started to write a note to myself. And I ended the note with "I love you, James." And I was like, you know what? I think the first day I wrote it was actually Blackout Friday. And Blackout Friday, I made the note and I told people, please don't forget this tomorrow or the next day or the next year, because, you know, I appreciate you all taking a stance and posting a black square to show solidarity for the Black Lives Matter movement. But we're going to be Black tomorrow. We're going to be Black next week. We're going to be Black next forever. So don't lose that fervor. Don't lose that passion that you all have now. And I ended the article. I ended the letter with "I love you, James," and I got such good feedback from my followers. And I was like, okay, well, you all seem to love this, so like let's keep going. So the next day I went out to protest. I made a point to really be as observant as possible, to get to gain a lesson for the day and to write about that lesson, and then end it with "I love you, James." So the third day, the note that you're talking about from high school was probably the most infamous of the "I Love You, James" series. So basically, I decided to kind of dig into my past to talk about the present. And I shared a personal story that I'll share with you all now. I always preface a story like this: I'm going to say the N-word. I don't like saying the word. I don't appreciate it. I don't think anyone should say it. But given the context of the story, I think it should be said so you understand the weight of the word within the context of this. Right. So when I was in 2004, I was in maybe sophomore or junior in high school. I asked Jen W to the prom, and Jen W said yes. Jen W is white as well. We picked out colors. We coordinated a little playlist back then when you burn CDs on a computer. Oh, yeah. And you know how we do it, old timers. So we made a CD. We did the whole thing. The day of prom, you know, tuxed out. She was in her dress at her parents' house. I borrowed my mom's car to go to Jen's parents to pick her up, take her to prom, take photos, the typical thing. And when I got to her house, her parents told me that they needed to reconsider. Now, I thought that was kind of strange. And the grandmother kind of just came out of the front and said, she says, quote, "I refuse to see my granddaughter go to the prom with a nigger." And now in that moment, I think in the post I said, like, I felt like less than. I didn't feel like a human. And that was the first time in my life that, you know, my mom is great. She's amazing. I love her dearly. But in that moment, there's nothing that she could have done. There's no protection that she could have bestowed to me, because it was such an existential threat. It came from nowhere. So I left. I went home. I cried the day of prom. And you guys
did not go to prom together.
No,
you didn't go.
We did not.
So you were robbed of prom on top of that.
On top of that, yeah. You know, it's never an easy story to tell, but it's getting more and more comfortable as I tell it more and more. Um, it, One of the most shocking things from the story, though, I think the most shocking thing from the story was that Jen, because she was on my level, didn't react, and her
Right.
parents didn't react. Like I feel like the old tired excuse of, oh, they come from a different time and things were different back then. I don't agree with that, but to a certain extent, for her grandmother, I would never want to say this, but I'll give her that a little bit, a tiny bit. But for her parents, there's no way you grew up in a time like that. For Jennifer,
Right.
there's no way you grew up in a time like that. You said yes to my advance asking you to prom. So
Yeah.
I was most disappointed in Jen and most disappointed in her parents because they said nothing. So presumably, in from my perspective, my 16, 17-year-old perspective, they agreed with her. So I shared that story, and that's the story I think that it resonated with a lot of people because it was so relatable. It was such a monumental point in so many people's lives. Prom, like,
Right.
and like you said a moment ago, I was robbed of it on a crux of something that I couldn't control, and it was definitely a shocking moment, but it taught me a lot.
Yeah. So thank you so much for reliving that with us. I know it's not easy to talk about. I mean, it's hard to hear, honestly. Which is good because it should be hard to hear. It should be hard to talk about. I think when people stop being affected by hearing that a story like that is when we're in trouble. So if you're watching and it affected you and you cried, in the most respectful, loving way possible, good, because that means that, and of course there's a loud noise right outside right now. But I wanted to just ask, so have you talked to Jen W. since you've kind of come public with this story on the I Love You, James series?
No, actually. So there are a few people, obviously, that I went to high school with who know who this person is.
Right.
I have so our mutual friend Trina has another friend who grew up in the same town as me, and she played I won't say the sport. She played a sport, and Jen was popular in said sport. And so Trina's friend knows who she is through the sport world in Maryland. But I've not talked to her since. I've had quite a few people that I went to high school with who reached out and like, I know you weren't there the night of prom. I know you got dressed. I saw the pictures like from your house, and like I know who this person is. I had no idea that that's why you didn't attend prom that year.
Yeah, because I would love to see, how did you ever talk with her after that night? Like, did you guys talk about what happened?
Back in the day when we had, I remember AIM, AIM,
Oh yeah,
AOL, and we had like a little like.
Listen, I remember when the internet came on CDs and you could buy like minutes of time on the internet.
Yeah, it was like 400 hours on the CD from Blockbuster.
Exactly.
So I remember her away message the day that happened, and it was something to the effect of like, I'll always side with my family or something like that. And it was I don't want to say it was always side. It was something coded where it was coded and unapologetic.
Oh boy.
Whatever it was. And I was genuinely shocked that even given that moment of blatant racism and blatant discrimination, you still sided with the wrong side of history.
Oh, definitely. And what's heartbreaking to me beyond this, I mean, honestly, I hope that you've talked to a therapist about that, because that's a traumatic experience, plain and simple. I mean, to have a parent, an adult, speak to you in that way, to be robbed of your this high school experience, and then to also be sort of denounced by this girl that obviously there was like some romantic feelings for, and all this while your brain is molding. Okay, but all of that aside, what really is devastating to hear is that these racist thought cycle is being perpetuated from generation to generation.
Exactly.
And not to defend this girl, that's not what I'm doing, but it's almost like, well, of course, I mean, this is what she's being taught. And that's why it's so clear that racism is taught. And so anti-racism can be taught, I believe. right? What do you think about anti-racism being taught?
I absolutely agree. Now, I'm not going to equate these two experiences, but they have the same ends. I'm also vegan myself, and I'm not a preachy vegan. Yeah, I'm not a preachy. Like, do what you want to do. But I always say this example: if there's a newborn baby in a crib, you put an apple and a bunny in the crib. Guarantee you, innately, the baby will eat the apple and pet the bunny because it's an innate thing. It's an innate thing. You don't need to teach that. People aren't born racist. It is taught. It's the converse of that. So with that said, to your point about anti-racism, I express the same sentiment. It can be unlearned. It's a learned experience, and it's. I think it takes on, for me, sometimes it takes on a pessimistic approach, because I'm 33 years old, and there are people that are my age or younger than me that carry that same anger and hatred on the basis of the color of people's skin. And it makes me think to myself, like, that whole old trope about like they're a product of their time is complete BS, because like you said a moment ago, it's taught from generation to generation. The fact that Jen sided with that proved to me in my like young mind that, yeah, you learn this, and it's at least in my heart, I think that that it's wrong, but still you stand by it because you stand by your family.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I'm so curious. The reason why I asked if you talked to her today, I mean, this is not what the Black Lives Matter that we're seeing in 2020 has happened in, decade. You just go back by the decade. I mean, this is not new. I mean, the stories are different. The people that we're talking about have changed, but the principle hasn't changed over the decades. So what I'm curious to see, and maybe, if you ever hear through the grapevine, or if you ever have a chance to talk to this gal, I wonder if her mind has changed, if she's opened up. I mean, what has changed over the decades is social media and the availability of this information to be so widely available on platforms like Facebook and Instagram that it's so consumable. Is it all valid or accurate? Obviously not, but there's a plethora of information out there, opinions out there. So I feel like in so many ways, it's easier now to have your mind be opened and changed and expanded. And I really hope and pray that Jen W. and her family have done some learning and some opening. That's all I can hope for. But if you ever talk to them, do let us know, because I would love to know.
But one point about that I often take, and this is again maybe the pessimistic approach to this, is that though there is access to information now, and it's literally at your fingertips at all times. Yeah. No one needed to teach me to be respectful to other people or to white people. Let's just have a very honest conversation. No one ever needed to teach me to be respectful to white people. So I have this thing where it's like, if I have the gumption and I have the will and the cranial knowledge to be respectful to someone else, even back then when we didn't have access to information, what's the excuse of a white person being disrespectful? Though it's not my job to do this, it's not my job to tell people about my blackness. It's not my job to do these things. It's your job to learn, just as it was my job to learn about Asian Americans and about white Americans and about Indian Americans. So a little part of me oftentimes takes this like this notion where it's like, I don't. The excuse of being ignorant is not an excuse.
That's not a defense. That can't just be the defense. If you're ignorant, that's your culpability. You are at fault for being ignorant. Change it. Right. And it's not easy. And I think that's what so many white people, myself included, are afraid of. Being wrong, saying the wrong thing, looking insensitive, not wanting to offend our Black friends. And it's like, that's, I think done a lot of learning, and I hope it's sort of common knowledge now, but that's our responsibility to be wrong, to be corrected, to have the conversations that are uncomfortable, to sit with discomfort, because that's the very least we could do at this point. And it is our responsibility to learn, even when it means being corrected. There's things I don't know now. I will be perfectly honest with you. Going into this interview, I was like, man, I never want to offend. I don't want to say the wrong thing. And it's like, I'm so grateful to you, because if I do say the wrong thing, what an opportunity to learn,
and I think that's one of the most important things that has come from this, to circle back to what you were saying a moment ago about this Black Lives Matter movement versus perhaps one in the past, is that I think that given COVID and our quarantine and what have you, we've all had to have a moment of self-clarity, a moment of sitting back and thinking to ourselves, what is important in our lives? And moreover, the importance of life itself, in that we are up now to 130 plus thousand Americans that have died from the coronavirus. And we see hundreds, thousands over the centuries of Black people that have died at the hands of white people and have gotten away with it. And we see public lynchings every single day. So I think that given our current circumstances, we've had nothing but time to reflect on ourselves and our choices, and the choices that we make for the future. So a little part of me is this may sound kind of strange, is a little appreciative of COVID-19 in that we all have had to hit that reset button, and we had to hit it hard. And we've all been faced with the realization that life is precious and it can be taken from you in a heartbeat.
Yeah. I have to say, you just said, you talked about public lynchings. The word lynch, in the way that we all have a visceral reaction to the N-word, the word lynching has that same, I get sick to my stomach when I hear that word too. So how we can, not flippantly, I know you're not saying it flippantly, but how we can just say, oh, there was a lynching today, as if it's not the worst thing in the world, is like, no, that word should make you sick to your stomach in the same way. I mean, it honestly, it makes my stomach do flip-flops. Like, a lynching? We're talking about lynching in 2020? Right. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's terrifying. We're both from the East Coast. Virginia obviously has... Lynchburg. Lynchburg.
I literally was thinking the exact... So if you guys don't know, Ashley's talking about a town in Virginia literally called Lynchburg, Virginia. Still to this day. That is the name of the town. Yeah. To this day.
Yeah. And it's like, it wasn't, that's not like someone's family name. That is exactly what it sounds like. Right. That's how that name came about. And, there's a lot of things that I love about Virginia. I love that a lot of the people are really kind and good-hearted and will feed you and, invite you over to dinner and be, good, nice, kind people. And, Southern charm is a real thing. And that's very present in Virginia. But so much of the reason I came to California, there were some backwards things. And I felt it even growing up in high school. I mean, it was just like, this isn't real. And so what worries me now is that because I live in California, and I think I live in this progressive, which, first of all, holy cow. I mean, if we're watching the news at all, California is not safe from racism. Jeez,
no. There was literally lynchings, suicides in California, suicides. What? Yeah. I don't believe that. I find it very difficult to believe that over the course of a month, there's been 10 plus Black men that have committed suicide via lynching.
In public.
I find that very, very difficult to believe.
Yeah.
So I think Ashley raised a good point. We're though we are in a flaming liberal bubble, right. And I know we love it. We're not insulated from hatred, and we're not insulated from racism or racist attacks by any stretch. Though they may be fewer and further in between, they still exist, and it's an unfortunate reality that we have to face even here in a progressive Mecca like California.
Right. But that's actually what scares me. I don't want there to be a bubble. I don't want there to be anywhere in the world where it's like, oh, well, here you're safe from racism and social injustice. I don't want that to be a bubble because I don't want those things to exist. So I don't want it to be, that's what's so heartbreaking. So let's talk about action. You have mentioned how, and I'm really honestly in agreement with you. We're in a privileged position in that we're healthy from COVID and we don't know, haven't suffered directly from COVID. But like you, I'm able to see some things to take, to be grateful for from COVID, which is resetting this opportunity to really learn, dig in, and take action for things like social justice. So in your mind, what are the ways that no matter your skin color, white, black, brown, whatever your skin color is, what do you think are the best ways to be taking action right now on the social justice front?
I think the best approach is at a macro level.
Okay.
Excuse me. I think the best approach is at a micro level. I meant to say micro
okay.
level. I think that the macro level approach, this cloaking, is a good Band-Aid, but it's not going to solve the problem. The problem of racism that we have in this country, I think, is going to be solved with us taking accountability for our own actions, Black people included, and calling out racism when you see it. Because I know that's like a very easy thing to say, but when you look at it through this lens, it may change your perspective on it. You calling out racism when you see it could literally save my life. Could literally save my life. Could, and I don't say that to be
not metaphorical.
I'm not kidding. It could, you saying to a white person with a gun who sees me, well, why are you following him? Or why are you puffing out your chest? You could literally save my life. So I think that us calling out these racist acts on a micro level, stop it. I see what you're doing and it's not okay. Get out. Make a scene. Yeah. Be loud. Who the F cares? If you have to be embarrassed for 30 seconds by yelling in a Barnes and Nobles to save somebody's life, then so be it. Right. So I think this micro approach, this attack in a smart way is the best way to combat this.
Yeah. How do you advise people who have to have tough conversations like this with family members, for example? I have a family member who I don't even know that this person realized what they were posting was as hateful as it was. And so I graciously called that person out, right? I said, I don't know if you realize this, but this is filled with lots of racist, anti-Semitic, hateful speech. And I don't know if you mean that. And then from that one post, I had it like almost started a war within my family. And so how do you recommend that people approach this with maybe generations before them that have these ingrained, like, do you think that we can change people's minds or have an effect on these generational beliefs?
This is going to sound very callous, but I promise to have an honest conversation with you.
Thank you.
If there are older people out there who still to this day carry that hatred and that vitriol in their old age, I'm going to say this very clearly in the microphone, then they need to die. I know that sounds very callous, and I understand that, but people who look like me are dying. Children are dying because people won't speak up. So if I understand these conversations with family members can be very difficult. It can be very, very hard. And it can create a massive divide within your own family unit. But think about the macro divide that's being created in this entire country and across the entire world. Your relatives' insignificant thoughts and backwards thinking, it seems very insignificant when it comes to a collective people dying on a regular basis. And again, I know that sounds crazy, and I'm not trying to offend any of your viewers by saying that those people need to die, but their thoughts, if they still think that way, given the social change and the social injustices that we've seen on a regular basis, then I'm sorry, there's no place for you in this world. There isn't.
So you don't think that we can change those older folks' minds?
I don't. I don't.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, I know that may not be the most optimistic way of looking at this, but
Yeah.
as a Black man in this world, I see so much racism that exists for me. And, for me, I'll be very honest. I'm light skinned. I'm attractive. I know I can pass. I'm very smart. I can skate by and not have to face racism's ugly head on a daily basis, but I see it.
Yeah.
So I don't think I want to be optimistic and say, yeah, we can change. But Ashley, we've been having the same conversation for decades. We were just giving civil rights. Thank you for Nancy. I appreciate you. We were just giving civil rights in the 60s. You and I could have just gotten married in the 80s.
I know.
We're not moving fast enough. If you want radical change, you need to change radically. And if that means some people need to go, then some people need to go.
Yeah.
And their ideas need to go as well.
I want to just give you sort of a happy sort of update to that. The family member that I was talking about, they might be younger than perhaps like the Gen W's grandmother, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But that family member,
what I was talking about, by the way.
Yeah. That family member actually did take down the post eventually. And I don't think that they had really read or understood what the post was, but it was something that was like kind of vague enough that they thought, okay, well, I can jump on this part because it's on its face. Like overall, it means, I stand for, X, Y, and Z. But after, I really felt like it's at least worth it to try, even if you're not going to change someone's opinion. What happened from that is that my post on that person's page, lots of people saw it. And that even if that was the only action, in my mind, it was that this wasn't going to be okay to let it stand. So saying something was so much more important to me than saying nothing. And in this case, it did have an effect. But even if it didn't, in some of the examples that you're giving, like these older generations, I think that it makes it okay for somebody else who's like thinking, I'm not really sure if I'm okay with this. It's like a show of support to somebody else that might be quietly reading somewhere on Facebook something that upsets them. You know what I mean? And so it's like, it's okay to challenge these thoughts, even if you can't change a person's mind. And that's, you can't change everybody's mind. You can't, but
I can concede to that to an extent. But again, that goes back to my point of like, it's not my job to explain my Blackness to everybody. I'm very happy. I'm very happy to talk about it. But, it gets to a point where like, every single day, like I had a friend today send me an article about another Black man who was shot and killed for literally doing nothing. And it's just, I think that's why I hold such a pessimistic approach to the idea of us having this post-racial society. Because like I said a moment ago, we've been doing this for decades and we've only made incremental changes. And I know that sounds like, well, James is just throwing up his hands and saying, well, just let it be. Of course, that's not my case. But I want us to, if we're going to have a conversation about race, it needs to be honest. And it doesn't need to be idealistic, because racism is not idealistic. It would be nice for us to be in a post-racial society, but it's not the society we live in. So I'm taking the approach of like, let's be real about this. Yeah. Racism is a very real thing, and I'm not saying that you said otherwise, or any other viewers have said otherwise.
But you're right in a way. I'm a white woman. You're gracious enough to come and talk with a white woman about race as a Black man, and you're right. My approach is somewhat Pollyanna idealistic, like, oh well, at least I can try talking to him. But what you're saying is like, that's not enough.
It's just not. And I know that approach of me saying like they need to die. Like I do take a little bit of that back. But you guys have to really think about this from my perspective. There are 70-year-olds, like the one in office, that we are not going to change their opinions about race. We're just not. They have lived 70 plus years, and they've harbored this hatred and this racism that exists in their life, and it's not going to change. I'm not going to waste my energy on convincing them otherwise, because there are so many other people that are going to have time in this world to make genuine change, to make real, radical, uprooted change that I could possibly convince and really engage and speak with. So, you know, a little part of me is saying, you know, I am sorry that you got to go, but if you still harbor that hatred in this society, then yeah, you need to go. You need to go.
No, I understand. And I mean, you know, it's too easy to be exhausted and overwhelmed. You know, God, if you just look back at history, you know, things haven't really changed. So it is, I'm not even eloquently saying it, but like, no wonder, you know, I think it's the right move to stop being kind and tolerant. It's not your job. It's not any Black person's job to teach us, you know, or to tell us the ways to be thinking. That is our job. So to that end, are there some people maybe out there on social media or resources? I know on your own Instagram, which, you know, let me put this up at the bottom of the screen, you guys. I know we're getting a lot of comments about how great James is. I couldn't agree more. If you want to find him on social media and follow his series, I Love You, James, the tags are right there down below on the bottom of the screen. James Maple Actor on Twitter, or Terrell James Maple on Instagram. You have a lot of great content there. I know in your profile, you have some links to different ways to get involved, petitions to sign, places to donate. Are there any, you know, either people or companies or whomever that you think people should be following or paying attention to right now?
Yeah, actually, you know, one of my good sources is Kendrick Sampson. He's on Insecure on HBO with. He's a great resource and a massive voice. Another one is BLM Los Angeles, for those of us that are LA based. That's another excellent source. Some are escaping me right now.
That's okay. We can pop some of these in the chat too. I just thought, you know, you have such a you're so dialed in, and so if there's people that you're like, you know, hey, I'm tired of teaching you. Here's some great people that are teaching. You know, check out these people or listen to these people. There's a lot of really great information available right now.
And I also want to throw out too. I always say this, but like, just know that the way that I protest is not the only way to protest. To kind of further expand on your point a moment ago, you don't need to be out in the streets. And you know, I understood there was a risk putting myself at risk being around 50,000 people. I totally understand that. But there are ways that you said, like you said a moment ago, you can protest, posts, donate. You can. One of the most interesting ways that I think people protested that was kind of not really dangerous, but as we were marching every single day, there were people flanked on our sides, handing out hand sanitizers, handing out masks, handing out water, handing out granola bars. So there are ways that you can advance our cause and help without being on the front line or without putting yourself at risk. There are ways you can help at the comfort of your own home. So just know that you don't need to be active and have a sign out there with me every single day to have your voice heard.
Yeah, amen to that. And I'm with you. And I think that the best thing I can do is use the small voice I have to make sure it's known that I don't stand for racism or intolerance or, you know, those don't fly with me. And so I don't know, maybe there's someone, I'm hesitant to say this because I think it borders on some of the stuff you were talking about earlier. Like, I don't want it to seem like, oh, this is me just using my voice and putting it out there Pollyanna style. I think it means showing posts of support. Obviously, I don't need to tell you what I'm doing, but ways that other people can donate to bailout funds, to therapy groups, to particularly provide funds for therapy for Black and brown people.
Supporting Black businesses, little things like that are all helpful.
Yeah. And I think my personal plea is for any of the folks, particularly my friends back home in Virginia. I hope that you guys are having those uncomfortable conversations with your family. And I think that you have love in your hearts, and I really hope that you are challenging any of those beliefs that you might be hearing from older generations. That's my plea. James, I can't thank you enough for being with us, for being just a lovely joy to talk to. And I will post this on the screen. Look at the love for James. James is awesome.
Hey, Nancy, I see you, girl. Thank you so much.
Which of course I agree so much, and I'm so glad that Trina connected us. So we've told everybody where they can find you. Are there any special projects you want people to be looking out for that you're working on?
I'm a writer for Afterbuzz TV, so I do a ton of articles for them. So definitely check me out there. As Ashley said a moment ago, you can find me on Instagram at Terrell James Maple, or on Twitter, where I'm far more inactive on Twitter. But you can find me there at James Maple Actor as well.
Awesome. And then, hey, if you want to listen to Marie Menounos' podcast, which James co-hosted, which is congratulations to you on that, by the way. That's a pretty big deal. Her podcast is Better Together. And I will actually drop the link to the specific episode in the comments below after the show wraps. But James, thank you so much for being here today. Happy Friday. And it was a real pleasure chatting with you. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you next week for a brand new show. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. See you later.